that I came into politics in the first place on the basis of a school governing body's powers. I was the chair of a school governing body when my kids were in primary school in the 1990s. And back then, the government started messing around with the South African Schools Act. It was a very good act. It was the South African Schools Act, I think, of 1995 or 96. And they started messing around and violating their own law. And I put 80 schools together and we took them to court and we won. And then the ANC behaved just like the old National Party back in the day. And if they lost in court, they would just change the law. And then I went to Parliament. I was absolutely shocked by what I saw there. And I said, I've got to be in this arena. I must put my hat in the ring. And that's how I got into politics, defending the rights of school governing bodies in the law. And so we feel very strongly about this because we believe in decentralization of power. We believe that parents have the best interests of their children at heart. And we believe the real solution to South Africa's education crisis is not to level everybody down and not to make all schools equally bad in the state system, but in fact to make all schools equally good.
So what option is available to you then? So if the president signs this into law, as the DA, right, as a political party, as you say, you've got members of parliament who are supposed to hold the executive accountable. Is there a plan to then take it to court, to challenge this in court?
We certainly won't sit quietly by and see the rights and powers of governing bodies eroded. That I can say for sure. And I can also say that we made this very, very clear to the ANC during the negotiations.
Okay, you made it clear, yes, during the negotiations, but clearly the ANC seems to be believing that this is the way to go in transforming the basic education sector. So you're saying that you're not going to take it lightly. Would you consider correction?
You know what, Kevin? Let's have a clear definition of transforming the basic education system. There's only one thing you have to do to improve, to transform, and that is to improve the quality. Transformation has nothing to do with race and everything to do with improving the quality of public schools. There are very few public schools of a high standard. We want to keep those of a high standard. What we need to do is make every other school of an equally high standard. And it's got nothing to do with resources. There's been a massive redistribution of resources to the poorest schools, but it has not been accompanied by improvements in quality. So the government needs to focus all its attention not on punishing and destroying the good schools, but on supporting and improving the bad schools. And that should be the focus.
How do you think signing the Bela bill into law going to destroy those good schools? Because the ANC, I'm asking that because the ANC says, and I hear you what you say about the need to improve the quality, but the ANC says, well, what this bill does is remove a loophole that allows SGBs, for instance, to exclude learners from admission based on race. They believe the bill will ensure the accommodation even of South Africa's official languages and address the historical injustices of forcing learners whose mother tongue is neither Afrikaans nor English to study in these specific languages. And this is not only, of course, related to Afrikaans and English. It could be in, let's say, Xhosa in the Northern Cape, where, not in the Northern Cape, in the Northwest, where, and this is an explanation that was given to me by the Education Department when we discussed this bill last week. They said, you look at the Northwest, for instance, a lot of people there speak Setswana, but a lot of people who are in schools as well are speaking Xhosa because most of their parents who work within the Platinum Belt in that province are coming from the Eastern Cape. You need an SGB that is more flexible and takes all of these things into consideration.
There is a constitutional right for people to have education in their mother tongue. That is a constitutional right. And a right is something that you cannot force people to take up. A right is something that you cannot take away from people. And there's another truth about language. Only the speakers of that language can take the steps that are necessary to protect that language. So if Zulu-speaking South Africans, if Xhosa-speaking South Africans, if Setswana-speaking South Africans, or any other group want to advance their language into a language of education from pre-primary to the highest level, the speakers of that language have to take that initiative in specific ways, just like the Afrikaners did. And they have an institution that is supposed to help them called PANCEL, the Pan South African Language Board. And they are there with a very big budget to help people do precisely that. Now, the deaf community has been very good in taking up that offer because they have developed sign language into a matric subject, South African Sign Language very specifically, and they've done an enormous amount to develop that language into the next official language for South Africa. So they've used that opportunity. Now, let me just do some very simple maths while I'm talking about language, and it is this. You've got very few good schools compared to the demand. Every child in South Africa and every parent in South Africa will want their children to go to the handful of good schools that there are, but they can't because there is just simply a capacity problem. Now, you cannot take away people's right to mother tongue education, and that is why school governing bodies have the right to determine the language policy of a school.
Okay.
There are many English-speaking schools in the area, but people whose children don't speak a word of Afrikaans want to send their children to an Afrikaans school for the simple reason that it's better quality. So obviously, the solution is to fix the quality of the bad English-speaking schools.
Okay.
Because you cannot overload a school and erode the rights of parents. You cannot do that.
All right, Helen, let me take the latest in Eyewitness News headlines. We're going to continue this conversation afterwards. It's 10:33. Also see your calls and WhatsApps. We'll also bring those in after the headlines with Sifiso Zulu.
Thanks, Clemens. Good morning. Well-known pastor Pasekamporo Motswaneng is in custody after being arrested for threatening teachers and brandishing a machete at a school in Katlehong. Motswaneng arrived at the school and forcefully removed his grandchildren after their father was denied permission to take them home from the Matsitiso Primary School yesterday. It's understood the children were caught in a dispute between their maternal and paternal families. The Western Cape Community Safety and Police Oversight MEC has lauded police for a successful operation in Khayelitsha, where officers were deployed after receiving information about a planned cash and transit heist. As the team approached, the suspects and the gunmen opened fire and police retaliated. And there have been massive explosions in Ukraine's capital of Kyiv after an air raid alert was issued out for possible Russian rocket and drone attacks. At least 2 explosions were in close proximity in the city, which has been successful in shooting down enemy fire. And those are the headlines of this Eyewitness News, and more at 11 or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
In Polshof, we still have bumper-to-bumper traffic on Witkoppen Road between St. Peter's School and Stonehaven, while in Jet Park, traffic remains sluggish on the R21 northbound. That's leaving Boksburg heading towards Kempton Park between the N12 and Griffiths. In Selby, leaving the Joburg CBD, traffic is heavily backed up on the M2 westbound from the Crown Interchange to Main Reef Road. Look out for those faulty traffic lights in North Riding at Malibonga Drive and Witkoppen, as well as in Midrand at Old Victoria Road and Olifantsfontein Road. I'll have your next Eyewitness News traffic update just after 11.
We live in a world where women can take up space, where women are free to dream about becoming. And it all started with generations of women who would not cease until women were liberated and seen as equals. This Women's Month, we remember the women of 1956 who marched to the Union buildings. These are the Mrokodos who walked so that today's woman could run, jump, or soar into her greatness.
Your voice is important.
This Women's Month, 702 remembers these women for their fighting spirit, their tenacity, their unwavering voice. Thank you for walking the talk.
Infertility is the inability to conceive after 1 year. 1 in 6 couples suffer from infertility. 1 in 10 women suffer from endometriosis, which causes painful periods and affects your quality of life. I am Dr. Neelan Pillay, a gynecologist and subspecialist in reproductive medicine at the Hope Clinic. Don't suffer in silence. We can help. Visit drpillay.co.za for more.
Aquele.
Aquele.
Aquili.
Aquela.
Aquile.
Aquili.
Aquile.
Aquela. No matter how you say it, one thing's for sure. Aquele has been your trusted natural spring water and delicious flavored sparkling drink for 25 years. Celebrating 25 years of refreshment and joy. Thank you, Mzansi, for your support and making us your favorite water brand. Aquele, spreading joy for 25 years.
It's Jet Set Go with Hollywood Bets and JetX. With 10 million Rand max payouts per flight. It's time to fly the multiplier higher with this breathtaking Hollywood Bets exclusive game. Bet on JetX today. Hollywood Sportsbook is a licensed betting operator. Hollywood Bet supports responsible gambling. No persons under the age of 18 years are permitted to gamble. Winners know when to stop. South African Responsible Gambling Foundation toll-free counseling line 0800 006 008 or WhatsApp help to 076 675 0710.
Retirement provision is a key challenge in South Africa. For this reason, the Old Mutual Thought Leaders Forum was established. It's an annual gathering where international and local thought leaders convene to share their knowledge, ideas, and solutions on the issue. For the month of August, 702 will be in conversation with the 2024 Old Mutual Thought Leader panelists to discuss various topics around retirement. Join 702 Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. brought to you by Old Mutual on 702. Let's walk the talk.
702.
The Clemens Mayatela Show.
Let's walk the talk.
It's 23 minutes now before 11 o'clock. We're in conversation with Helen Zilla, the DA Federal Executive Chair. I've got your inputs on the WhatsApp line, also your calls on 011-883-0702, and we'll get into those in a moment. Helen, I just want to confirm here, you indicated you won't sit quietly if this Bella bill is signed into law by the president. Am I correct to say that you are not ruling out any court action in challenging it, should it be signed into law as the DA?
Of course I'm not ruling that out. I'm not ruling that out at all.
All right.
I mean, we take court actions all the time in defense of the Constitution. And just because we're in a government of national unity does not mean that the DA is going to stop defending the Constitution. We are going to continue defending the Constitution.
Okay. Let's talk about the realignment of politics in
Can I just say something? Because
Sure.
I've been, as they say, triggered by the 702 advertisement for Women's Month.
Go ahead.
It's all very good to salute the past, and I'm all in favor of that. But what about speaking a little bit about the present, of the rate of teenage pregnancies, which is skyrocketing, of the men who have intergenerational sex with young girls, leave them with babies, and walk away from them. That is the kind of thing that destroys women's future. And that is, frankly, what 702 should be talking about in Women's Month. Just saying.
Okay, you've triggered me as well. So I'll also just say that 702 has actually been having those conversations. I can send you podcasts. I know Bongani Bingwa, for instance, forecast the big interview, which is after 7 o'clock. That's the time where they put the big interviews and conversations. Bongani Bingwa focused on this conversation that you're saying 702 should have this Women's Month. I can tell you about other hosts on this platform who have had that conversation. So when we talk about Women's Month and celebrating women, doesn't mean that's all we do on 702. You can walk and chew at the same time, I always tell the listeners. So the fact that you hear an ad like that doesn't mean we're abandoning other conversations. In fact, the very same conversation you're raising now has been had multiple times here on 702. And we won't stop. We'll continue having them. I want us to talk about...
Let me make a suggestion.
Yeah.
Your main ad should be an admonition. You can have a conversation now and again about the history of Women's Day.
No, Helen, you and I are not experts in ads and advertising. Yeah, no. Let's let the sales team do what they have
All
to
right.
do. Let's do what you and I are good at, right? I'm a broadcaster, you're a politician. Let's talk about the realignment of politics. You've indicated that over the next 10 to 15 years, the ANC was likely to disintegrate because it's going to be grappling with the loss of complete state power, and that you think your real competitor in politics is the EFF because the EFF sort of knows what it stands for. Is that what you see even when we look towards the 2026 or 2029 elections, that ultimately as the DA, your real competitor is going to be the EFF?
This is very, very old news, because if you go back, I said this in 2014, that is 10 years ago, Clement. When the EFF first came onto the scene and got 6% in that election, I spoke to our federal council. I drew them a triangle on the board, which I'll one day draw for you, and I explained to them how politics would realign. I've been talking about the realignment of politics since 2007, when I became the leader of the DA. And I've been focusing very much on that because it's crucially important. Now, there are three things you need to be a viable political party. The only party that has all three is the DA in the whole of South Africa. We're the only party who has all three. Firstly, we're the only genuine...
And the DA came with members and percentage that it is. And this narrative that the ANC must bully him. South Africa must be democratic and open to all people.
All right, Benny, thank you for your call in Pretoria. Boucher, you are in Pretoria. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Clement, and good morning. I just want to hear from Ms. Zilla, who's been very critical about other political parties. If she's able to be critical with the DA, you can't sit there and tell us that the EFF is this, the ANC is that, they don't know what it is that they stand for, and so on and so forth. What is it about the DA that is so right that it's not growing, if they're so perfect? Can Helen Zilla please just tell us what is not right about the DA? What is it that is not right about the DA? Can she give us a balanced view and stop telling us about all these wonderful things because she's saying that they're wonderful? If you're so wonderful, why are you not growing as a party? Why are you not growing as a party?
So
and to sit there and be critical of other parties saying that they don't know what they stand for and the DA knows what it stands for, that's very arrogant.
Right, Boucher in Pretoria, thank you so much for your call. Helen?
Good, thank you very much indeed, Clement. In the middle there were a whole lot of people speaking, and I didn't know whether they were advertisements for another show or whether they were on your show. But let me start. Was it Flores who asked? Yes, absolutely. He made a very good point about being a guest in the GNU. In 1995-96, when we were in the first GNU, that was on the basis of the Constitution. The ANC had got 62% in the election in 1994, and then every party was a guest in the GNU because the ANC had an overall majority without any other party. So then they were a guest in the GNU. And that's why the DP turned it down. Because if you're merely there as a guest, then you have to toe the line and you can't stand up for your voters. You have to listen to the majority party. And it was for that reason that Tony Leon, who was our leader then, said no thank you when he was invited, and he preferred to build us in opposition, which was a good strategy because it worked very well.
All right.
And in this point, I can just answer the question of, was it Boucher?
Yeah, what's wrong with the DA?
Yeah, what's wrong with the DA? Well, let me tell you, Boucher, that in 1994, the DA got 1.7% of the vote in its predecessor party, the DP. Now we are on 22% of the vote. And in fact, we were the only party represented in Parliament that grew in the last election. The only one. Every other party represented in Parliament went backwards. So the DA has grown from 1.4% to 22%. We know exactly what we stand for, and the people who vote for us are voting for a set of principles and values. And more people, as we see from the election results, support our principles and values of non-racialism, of constitutionalism, of the rule of law. And that is why we will keep on growing. It doesn't happen rapidly in a complex plural society, but in a system where you have coalitions, you don't need to get over 50%. And that's a very important point. We're not aiming for over 50% because no party is likely to get over 50% again. You just have to be in a strong position in the 20s and you can be the biggest party in a coalition. And our aim is to be the biggest party in a coalition. And that's very important for people to understand.
So just two last questions, Helen. Hopefully,
I'm answering the question about Fikile.
Which question?
There wasn't a question about Fikile doesn't accept that they don't have an outright majority.
Yeah.
That was the question. Well, absolutely. They want to govern as if they have got a majority, which is not the case. On the Bella Bill with Lumka, yes, I'm sure in Boksburg there are many schools, and I know that there are many English-speaking schools and many Afrikaans-speaking schools, and you can choose to send your child to the school with the language that it has, that you choose. It is for the school governing body to determine language policy, and it's not true that that makes a school lily white. In the Western Cape, we have many schools that teach in Afrikaans and that have black, coloured and white children. They have children from all races, and those children speak Afrikaans at school and are taught in Afrikaans at school because it is a right in the Constitution. So it's very important to understand that and to defend that right. Okay. Because if you defend other people's rights, they will defend your rights.
Yeah, Helen?
Because in a constitutional democracy, we defend everybody's rights.
Yeah, just hold it there, Helen. By the way, if you missed the debate we had on the Bella Bill, we had all the government, the Department of Education, we had SADU, we had the organization that represents the school governing bodies, we even had the DA. Just go check out that podcast because it really gives you a sense of what the different parties are arguing about, what is right and what is not right about this particular bill. I've got just three more questions that I want to ask Helen, coming also from the listener. So, Helen, if you don't mind, I can just ask you those after the news at 11 o'clock before we continue with the rest of the show. It's a minute now before 11.
As the fog rolls down Table Mountain and the sun rises over the Cape, thousands of runners from every corner of SA and the globe will come together to seek gold, glory, and the highest marathon prize money in Africa. Will you be running with us at the 2024 Sanlam Cape Town Marathon while helping us to become Africa's first major? Be a part of history on the 19th and 20th of October. Enter now at CapeTownMarathon.com. The 2024 Sanlam Cape Town Marathon is brought to you by Sanlam and proudly supported by 702.
To walk the talk is to turn words into meaningful actions. And it's what we at 702 are committed to doing every day. We are also committed to following the rules set out by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission's Code of Conduct. To give you balanced programming, fair comments, and accurate news. But if we stumble along the way and you feel we are not living up to the code, let us know on comments at 702.co.za. And if after that you're still not happy, you can direct your complaint in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission. Email bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more, visit bccsa.co.za.
Are you with the best insurance company in South Africa? Outsurance has consistently had the best ombudsman for short-term insurance results for the past 11 years, and they really mean it when they say you always get something out. They pay over 1.7 million rand in out bonuses every day. So why would you want to be with anyone else? SMS out to 45142. That's out to 45142. Or visit outsurance.co.za for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's and information online.
This is Eyewitness News.
Good morning, I'm Sfiso Zulu Former President Jacob Zuma has been dealt another blow after the Supreme Court of Appeal dismissed his second bid to overturn the setting aside of his private prosecution against President Cyril Ramaphosa. Zuma served Ramaphosa with a summons in 2022 for a private prosecution on charges of being an accessory after the fact to contraventions of the NPA Act in a matter involving State Advocate Billy Downer. The former president accused his successor of failing to act on a complaint against Downer, who's the lead prosecutor in Zuma's arms deal corruption case. The case was reviewed and set aside by a full bench of the High Court in Joburg last year. Zuma's advocate Limpopo says their instructions are now to approach the Constitutional Court. Today's proceedings have been postponed to February next year. Well-known pastor Marumo is in custody after being arrested for threatening teachers and brandishing a machete at a school in Katlehong. Musoneng forcefully removed his grandchildren after their father was denied permission to take them home from the Matsidiso primary school yesterday. It's understood the children were caught in a dispute between their maternal and paternal families. Speaking on the Clement Mayatela show earlier today, Commissioner Tomim Tombeni said police and other armed men who were with the pastor have also been arrested.
This matter has been brought to the attention of the police, and we indeed responded, and ultimately we dealt with the matter. As for now, 4 people who have been since being arrested or in custody.
Western Cape Community Safety and Police Oversight MEC Unro Murray has lauded police for a successful operation in Kailisha, where officers were deployed.
We got more black people voting for us than all of those parties put together. So I would very much like to say to you that the DA is the only non-racial party. A lot of our public representatives are black, a lot, and they're doing extremely well. The problem, Clement, is that the media only takes notice of a black person in the DA when they leave the DA. They ignore those leaders and those public representatives while they're inside the DA, so that people can, like the person who's just said, we don't have black public representatives. It's because the media couldn't care about people, black people, when they're getting on with their work and doing brilliantly inside the DA. They only take notice of them when they leave the DA. And that is very unfortunate, but we know what it is. We know where most of the journalists come from. They come from all these critical race theory journalism schools, so we understand exactly what we're up against. But we are the one party in South Africa. Your race tells me nothing about you. Your integrity, your honorable honesty, your character, your sense of responsibility, your commitment to other people, that tells me who you are. Your color doesn't.
All right, yeah. Helen, thank you so much for making time for us. I think next time we'll bring you back to come and discuss the issue of race. I remember Musi Mamani, when he was actually elected leader of the DA, he said, if you don't see that I'm black, then you don't see me. So, which I actually agree with. It doesn't mean race particularly defines who you truly are in all your essence. But in our context in this country, it's important that you actually see that I'm black. It doesn't speak to whether I'm more resourceful, I'm more intelligent or less. But given the context, I actually want you to see that I'm black. If you don't see that, then you don't see me at all. Thank you for responding to some of these questions that have come from our listeners. It's 14 minutes now after 11 o'clock. Helen, are you saying something there?
Yes, I'm responding.
Yeah?
Those of us who are blessed with the gift of sight can obviously see what color a person is. But we don't make judgments about people on the basis of what color they are.
Well,
and that is the problem with this mad wokeness. It says, we see that you're black, therefore we put you in a box of being black, therefore we think you've got the same opinion as every other black person. That puts you in a stereotypical mold. That is racism, and we reject it.
And that's not what we're talking about here. Yes, the apartheid system actually made a judgment on people based on their skin color. That's not what's happening in this democratic country.
We don't want to reinforce it.
Yes, that's not what's happening here. But I'm just saying to you that as a black person, actually, I want you to take my blackness into context, because that comes with history.
Well,
that comes with context. If you think you don't want to do that, or as the DA, that's not what you believe in, that's also fine. But understand that there are some black people who will say, you noticing and taking my black context into consideration doesn't mean you're giving me more props, or doesn't mean you think I'm less off. It means you are wholesome in your consideration of me as a person, given where we come from in this country.
Okay, Clement, I'd like to make one more point and then I'm going. There is no way that you can look at assume that they have the same context. That is the risk of looking people on the basis of their race. A poor person born in a shack to a single mother who potentially, let's say, has AIDS is in a very different context from the child of a top politician or top businessman who also happens to be black, who goes to the best schools, etc., etc. You can tell nothing about people in the modern South Africa by just looking at their color. You have to take their context into account. What do you know about my context and my history and what happened to my parents and grandparents by looking at the fact that I'm white? What do you know about my upbringing and my value as a person just by looking at the fact that I'm white? You cannot generalize about people on the basis of their race. You have to see them as individuals, in terms of which their color happens to be one, but in my view, an unimportant attribute.
All right.
I look more at their context, reality of their lives, and the quality of their character.
All right, Helen. Yeah, we look at it differently. Maybe we should have you back so we can have a conversation broadly about that. Thank you so much for making time for us. Let's move now to our World of Work feature. It's 17 minutes after 11.
7:02.
World of Work.
All right, so on our World of Work feature this morning, I want us to have a conversation about what the laws say about working overtime. There are many people who work overtime. So can compensation for overtime be made in leave credit days, or must they always be monetary? And what happens when some people abuse overtime? Natasha Moni is a labor lawyer who's joining us on the line. Natasha, thanks for making time for us. Good morning. Good morning.
My pleasure. Good morning.
So let's just start with how companies look at overtime. Do companies look at it differently to others? Is the policy almost the same? Because when you look at Section 9 of the Basic Conditions and Employment Act, an employee may not work in excess of 45 hours a week. Is that the standard, or can companies come with their own policies as to how to govern overtime work?
Clement, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act actually stipulates what and how much the overtime amount of work that you would do in any one day. So it is a statutory law that will then govern the overtime that you will work at your workplace. There are other things that govern it, and that would be your collective agreement. You could also agree